So these are all examples of how companies are usually using social listening specifically to adapt to the audience and try to come from this mentality of having a communication and a dialogue with your fans and your audience. In this third video on the series of social listening, we're talking about some examples where companies and institutes have done creative things based on feedback with the community and their audience. And the first example here comes from the Santa Fe Institute. So what happened was the movie Jurassic Park, they came out with a sequel called The Lost World, and the actor Jeff Goldblum, who played Ian Malcolm, he opens up the movie with a lecture that he's giving at the Santa Fe Institute. So after the movie comes out, Santa Fe Institute started to get people asking them, hey, where's the faculty profile for Ian Malcolm? Where's his scientific papers? You know, it was a made-up character from Jurassic Park, but they were just curious. And so Santa Fe Institute got the idea to put up a fake faculty profile of Ian Malcolm on their website, and they created fake journal articles that he had made. And they actually used artificial intelligence to create these journal article titles. And the result of creating these titles through artificial intelligence, which was motivated by the movie The Lost World and Jurassic Park, actually generated some insights and discussion on artificial intelligence, which aligned with the Santa Fe Institute, right? So this sort of creative scenario happened because they listened to what people were saying and they responded to them. Another interesting example, if you're going to be doing social listening, then and responding to the customer, then you sort of need a medium where you can get their responses. And this is pretty easy with visual information. You could put up a little display and there's a response that you can ask for and get the click response. It's more tricky with audio advertising. So this infinity ad is an example of the approach of using this with audio, and they call it continuous dialogue advertising. So one feature of this form of advertising is that you have to have audio come on that can change and adapt based on responses from the listener. So in their ad, they were curious if people were interested in test driving the vehicle. So if they said yes, in response to the first portion of the ad, then they would receive more information about signing up for a test drive. If they responded no, then they could be given more information about the vehicle. And then they could store that response and they could present that advertisement later on at a different time and adapt based on the response that they previously gave. If they said they were interested in a test drive, they could tell you more information about the car the next time. If they told you that you were interested in the test drive, they could tell you more details about signing up next time you hear the ad. If they said they weren't interested in a test drive, the next ad they hear could instead be providing additional information about the vehicle, for example, right? And this is responding and adapting to the audience, to the potential customer. So another example of listening that you probably already heard of comes from Netflix. So Netflix had their own user data, and from that, they could simply try to determine what their users would be interested in watching. So they saw that they had a lot of fans who liked the director David Fincher, the actor Kevin Spacey, and they adapted their content to produce House of Cards based on this knowledge. Nike has listened to basketball players. Actually, they did something more complex. They didn't just talk to basketball players. They put out 36 cameras on the court. They discovered that there are 3 different ways that basketball players tend to run the court, and so they created 3 different types of shoes that would match the needs of these 3 different types of basketball players. Now, there's a Drum article popping up about Google titled, "Google's Global Brand Lead Says Ad Industry Needs to Get Better at Pre-Testing Digital Creative." So this sort of notion is popping up for Google themselves here, the notion that you're going to take smaller pieces of advertisement and give it to smaller audiences and see how they respond and adapt based on how they respond. You'll adapt the sort of final version based on how they respond, and then you could send that out to a larger audience. The final example is with Rice Krispie Treat. What they did is they looked at the internet searches and they found that searches for school snacks were correlated with searches for lunchbox notes. So they discovered that people have an interest in sending notes to their children in their lunch boxes, and that when they're looking up information about that, they're also looking up information about school snacks. This gave them the idea that Rice Krispie treats could be included as school snacks, and on their wrapper, they would allow a space where people could write notes to their children. They encouraged the parents to write notes on the wrapper within that blank space. So the parents could write custom notes to their kids, but not only, they went a step further, and they had commercials, short commercials, that would have different notes being written on the different packaging that was based on the content where that commercial appeared. So these are all examples of how companies are usually using social listening specifically to adapt to the audience and try to come from this mentality of having a communication and a dialogue with your fans and your audience. So this is the end of the 3-part series on social listening. Thanks for checking this out. Hit the subscribe and the bell if you'd like to hear more about what were our discussions about psychology from Intermark Group. Hit the like if you like and the share if you share. And let us know in the comments if you know of any other examples of how companies are using these sort of creative approaches to engage with their audience.